Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for being with us tonight. It's been quite a week's worth of news since we got together last week, both nationally and locally here in Tennessee. From the Senate passing additional funding for immigration enforcement to a 7.8 earthquake striking the Philippines, and Iran firing more missiles into Israel. Fallout, or I would say complaints, continue over the redrawn congressional maps by the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. Boo-hoo. A lawsuit was filed to block a state immigration law and Choppergate, the main story of tonight's program. But before we get to that and say hello to our guest tonight, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that this past Saturday, June 6th, was the 82nd anniversary of D-Day, the invasion of Normandy, which began the turning of the tide of the war in Europe. Casualties were heavy, especially in the American sector at Omaha Beach. Many paid the ultimate price that day, and now we're coming to a time where that generation is beginning to rapidly fade away. We should make every attempt to never allow their memory to completely fade away, nor our appreciation for the incredible sacrifices that they made in our service to our country during those dark times in our collective history. In their honor, we have a short presentation.
Some of the landing barges are stopped by concrete obstacles built far out in the water by the enemy. Out of enemy firing range, the LSTs wait to move in until the beaches are cleared. The arrival of motorized equipment marks the end of the first phase of the landing.
Now back to the show. We just wanted to do a little quick memorial there to all of those great men in that day that, many of them sacrificed, paid the ultimate price, and many, came back, and that's something that they never forgot and something we should never forget. And now to the show. I think we would all agree that law enforcement has an important and demanding and often dangerous job. Many are eager to point out any shortcomings on their part, or in some cases even make bogus claims. But it's not unreasonable to expect law enforcement to follow the law and even their own policies. When they don't, it should be absolutely should be addressed and corrected. A situation has arisen in Putnam County involving Sheriff Eddie Farris and the allegation of the misuse of a helicopter last September during a campaign event for gubernatorial candidate John Rose, while Sheriff Farris was acting as an advisor for John Rose at the time. We all have the sort of details, we have all the sort of details and conflicting reports on these issues and the determination by the State Bureau of Campaign Ethics. On a much darker note, we will also discuss the murder of a teenager in Putnam County by a longtime informant for the sheriff's office. Our guests tonight are the Patriot Punk, Chase Matheson, and Terry Hembree, a retired officer from Putnam County Sheriff's Office who also has a current lawsuit against the department. But first, a word from our sponsor. Imagine a product that uses light reflection to activate the body's own natural energy, supporting healing, improving performance, and combating aging without drugs or stimulants. Check out LifeWave, and we'll be right back.
Light, the energy of life itself. Since the beginning of time, light has sustained us, fueled our growth, and shaped the world. Even Einstein recognized that everything we are is made of light. But what if we could harness the light within us, not just to live, but to renew, restore, and rejuvenate? Introducing LifeWave X39, the first product in the world that activates stem cells using our body's own light. Backed by clinical research, multiple patents, and over 10 years of stem cell research, a revolutionary wearable light technology that unlocks the power of activating our own stem cells with a single, safe, affordable, non-transdermal patch that puts you back in control of how you look, feel, and perform. Unlike drugs or chemicals, X39 works naturally, awakening your body's ability to heal and thrive. It's time to unlock your full potential, restore your vitality, and embrace a healthier, more vibrant you.
Now to our guest. Chase, aka the Patriot Punk, is very well known for his reporting across the state, and Mr. Terry Hembree has a public, also has the Investigative Ledger, another Substack that's widely read. Thank you both for being with us, and for those in the audience that might not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do. We'll start with Chase, who's a little more noticeable than some.
Well, I do have a 14-inch mohawk, give or take a few inches, depending on when it is. And I'm an investigative journalist that started during 2020 when all the lockdowns were happening. And I couldn't sit by any longer and just watch people do nothing. And I started getting involved. I hosted a Back the Badge rally in June of 2020 during the George Floyd protest. And did everything that I saw other people in the state weren't doing. And over the past 6 years, one of the things that I saw wasn't happening was enough investigative, independent journalism like you guys do here, where you talk about and discuss local issues. Everything was all global. So I started my own little network, and we do everything from daily segments to a weekly or twice weekly podcast and investigative journalism like we'll discuss tonight.
All right. Now, what days are your podcast on?
Wednesdays and Sundays. It's the same time you guys go live, 7:00, and we normally go about 2 hours. And it's just a conversation format about current events, and we have different guests on, try to discuss all forms of opinion.
Okay. And Terry, you are a retired investigator. That you retired out of Putnam County in what, 2019?
Yes, I retired from the Sheriff's Department in Putnam County in 2019, but I actually began my career with the Cookeville Police Department. Worked there for almost 12 years, and then when I left there, went to work for the District Attorney's Office there in Cookeville, which is the 13th Judicial District. Worked there for almost 24 years as a criminal investigator. Also, I worked about 2 years with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation as a special agent, polygraph examiner. And then I worked at the Sheriff's Department as the Chief of Investigations.
Well-rounded. Very well-rounded, right?
Yes. I was talking to you earlier today, and I was telling you that I didn't realize how long it had been, but it's been quite a while. It's been a few years back.
Yeah. Well, now, I just want to say this before we get started. Now, Chase, you said your first thing was a Back the Badge event.
My first thing was actually an anti-lockdown protest on April the 20th of 2020.
Okay.
I actually lost my job in aerospace for that. And then shortly after that, we had the George Floyd riots. I went down there with a friend to help clean up. And then I was scrolling through memories the other day and happened to see the news articles from the Back the Badge rally, and it just sparked that interest. And I've been getting called a cop hater a lot lately, and I'm the farthest from it. I was one of the few people that would go toe to toe with BLM and those bust-in rioters, and because when I feel when that the truth stands above all else.
Right. And that's why I wanted to mention that, because, and I didn't know that until you said that one of your early events was Back the Badge. And of course, Terry, you're retired law. So you guys are not anti-cop, either one of you. You're not out to, to get the cops. You support them. You support them when they're doing the right thing. So I just kind of wanted to set that out there. So, all right. So
100%. Yes.
So let's start with the John Rose fish fry. Now, the biggest connection on this, as far as John Rose, is it was his event. And I'm reasonably sure he didn't tell the sheriff, hey, bring a helicopter here. I'm pretty sure he probably just wanted the sheriff to come, to show up at the event. Although he was, at the time, what was he, one of his volunteer advisors, chief political advisors? What was his status?
He was introduced on stage as a senior political advisor for the campaign. And he has since made an endorsement video where they talk about being, I think, high school friends. Oh. So they've known each other quite a long time. And Cookeville's a small, tight-knit community. So and when you go back 40 years, that's not unusual.
Okay. All right. Do you know if he's still his advisor or not? Do you know?
They have blocked me from my personal page on that, and they've never once responded to a request for comment. So okay. I don't.
Okay. All right. So there was a helicopter flown in. Let's talk about it. And basically, there was an issue with the use of that helicopter, or I guess you could say misuse. And you guys, I think both of you did a FOIA and requested that. So let's start with that. And Chase, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to you, Terry, because I think both of you put in a FOIA for the same thing, correct?
Very similar. They overlapped, I think. So, and I think I kind of started it off, and Terry's dug deeper into it because I'm occupied with some other things that we'll discuss later on. But I had a friend who is a big supporter of John Rose. I'm not sure if they still are, but I think they are. And they were invited to the fish fry. And my co-host went as a guest. No, we weren't doing any investigative reporting, but he sent me pictures because he saw Eddie and he was there covering things originally as the media.
Right.
And one of the random pictures he sent me was of the helicopter in the field. And for a little bit of information that I've never actually made public, one of my sources told me that there had been an incident near John Rose's Cookeville house and that they'd had to increase patrols, so that he decided he was going to move to his farm in Lancaster. And I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate, but that is what I was told by some people at the time. And
so back up just a second here. You said something that kind of piqued my. So this was September of 25. Right?
Yes, sir.
In September of 25, he wasn't on the farm that he's at now?
I don't believe so. Maybe by September he was, but before that summer.
Okay.
I don't. Again, I'm hearing that from someone that Terry also knows that we may discuss later on, who has a very tight relationship with Eddie. But I don't. I can't attest 100% to that. I never drove around their house.
I got you. Okay.
But because of that, I knew that the farm was in a different county. So when I saw the Putnam County Sheriff's Office helicopter at the John Rose farm, a bell went off, and I went, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And then I saw the video of Sheriff Farris being introduced as the senior political campaign advisor, not just like a behind-the-scenes supporter.
Right.
And the helicopter never took off during the event. It stayed there the entire time. So
the event was in Smith County, right?
It was in Smith County, Lancaster, Tennessee. Okay. And the event was a John Rose for Governor event that you had to RSVP through a Win Red donation site. So I posted like a graphic, a meme on the internet about that, and kind of it spurred a lot of controversy with some people. And then I kind of told Terry Hembree, because we talk on occasion, and I told him a little bit about what I had found and was trying to find out more about the helicopter. So I submitted a few records requests, and then when I didn't know what else to look for, I think Terry picked it up from there and kind of kept digging. So,
Okay. So Terry, you weren't there, but what Chase told you didn't sound right. Is that correct?
No, that's correct, because the helicopter does not belong to the Putnam County Sheriff's Department. So that helicopter was obtained through the Defense Logistics Agency, which is a federal agency that takes surplus military equipment, and they do assign that to law enforcement agencies for use. But those helicopters, once the Sheriff's Department gets through using those, they have to turn those back in. So it doesn't really belong to them. It belongs to the Department of Logistics, Defense Logistics, or the Law Enforcement Support Office or program, which is usually referred to as a 1033 program. So they had those before I left the Sheriff's Department in 2019. They actually had two at the time that I left. They had one that was operational and one that wasn't operational. So it was my understanding, and of course, that's a different unit than I was assigned to. Of course, I had some information about it, but my understanding was they were going to use the one that was non-operational is for like spare parts,
Right.
things of that nature. So they only had one operational at that time. Now, I've heard recently that they have as many as 3 helicopters now. I haven't confirmed that. I don't know if that's true, but they would all have came through that same program, because what they'll do is they'll swap them out, periodically, because when that helicopter gets to its end of life,
Yep.
where it can't be serviced anymore, they have to take it out of service. And if there's another one that they could swap out with, they would probably do that.
Now, what's the requirements to use for the county to use a helicopter? You can't just say, "Hey, I want the chopper
Well,
today," right?
no, there is a memorandum of understanding, or MOU, that's assigned by the LESO office or LESO office, that spells out how that helicopter can be used. That was one of the records that I had requested from the Sheriff's Department, and that's one of the records that they did not provide to me. In fact, they didn't respond to that request at all, which is not part of my ongoing lawsuit with them, but that lawsuit will be amended to include that particular violation as well.
Oh,
They failed to respond to that request.
okay.
So, but there is, specific uses for those helicopters, and typically it's for counter drug operations, search and rescue, things of that nature.
Right.
Political events, no, that's off the, you can't do that. And so when Chase was telling me this, I said, no, there's no way they could use it for that event. And unless they're using it for security. If they're using it for security, which would make no sense to me because it's on the ground.
Right.
And I did obtain the flight record for that helicopter that was provided by the Sheriff's Department. That's one record they did provide me.
The Putnam
But it's
County.
basically just, Putnam County.
Okay.
It's basically just like a screenshot of a computer screen where it shows that they've entered some information. And the information that was entered into that was marijuana eradication and flight overwatch. And it had Putnam/Smith. So the way that read to me is that the marijuana eradication was done in Putnam County, and then the flight overwatch would have been done in Smith County. But flight overwatch is kind of a broad term. So typically when you think of flight overwatch, you think of something that's airborne,
Right.
that's overhead, and
Yeah.
that's circling around and hoovering in the area to provide some overwatch of that area. But I mean, it could be stationed on the ground. That's possible. But typically, when they would place a helicopter in that position, what they would consider an overwatch, that would be for like a response, an immediate response.
Right.
Like a rescue,
Yeah.
where they had to go in and extract someone. So we don't really know what the purpose of the helicopter was. Now, the other thing is, and I think I may have mentioned it already, is that there has to be a mutual aid agreement between the agencies to request that assistance.
Between the
That
counties.
was something else that I had requested,
Okay.
from the Sheriff's Department, from Putnam County, and they did not provide that either.
Now, Chase, you did a FOIA, and if I remember correct, talking to you guys earlier, you got some information that they didn't give Terry initially.
So
correct?
I originally got, and kind of where I just stopped looking into it because I knew Terry was also digging into it. He knew more about what to look for.
Right.
There was, I actually got I think it was me that got the flight request back, and I saw the marijuana eradication on there. And I thought that was funny because and I had looked up the flight path on Flight Tracker and found that it was a 20-minute flight. And I just thought that, where were they doing marijuana eradication at? What kind of farm does John Rose have? Maybe he does deserve my vote. I don't know, but it interested me, and that was where I was kind of stuck because I don't know everybody that works in the sheriff's office, but Major Hembree does. He knows a lot of the people, not all of them, but he knows a lot of the people that were there during his tenure. And he knew a lot of the policies. He knew how the inner workings of the sheriff's office worked. So if I got information and I didn't know what to do with it, or I would just pass it to him. And it's my understanding that through some of the research he did, that some of the altitudes weren't accurate. And
okay, let's talk to Terry about that. Terry, what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so I checked, actually, I think it was Chase who sent me the information about the helicopter. And so there's an app that you can download on your phone called Flight Aware. And that actually tracks flights, commercial flights, military flights, helicopters. So what you do is you just put the aircraft identification number in there, search it, and it'll pull up and it'll tell you the history of those flights. So that's what I did. And this is what we came up with, is the information for that flight that particular day. So I don't know how well you can see it on the screen, but if you notice that when this flight was pretty much airborne, that it was traveling at about 100 miles per hour at an altitude of about 2,000 feet. Well, that's not typically the altitude and speed you would do marijuana eradication at. In fact, I don't know of anybody who would do it at that altitude and speed. It's too high and it's too fast. And plus, it's in a straight line. The path of that aircraft is going in a straight line. And again, that's not the way you do marijuana eradication.
And the whole flight was, what, 20 minutes, you say?
Yes, but if you're looking at the flight aware data, so that flight is, I think it was like 9:59 a.m. until 10:13 a.m. Then it kind of drops off. And the reason for that is because the app loses that flight. The flight's still it's still in motion and everything, but the app itself loses it because that's a rough terrain. There's a lot of hills and things in there. And so, but the area where the flight seems to have lost from the flight aware tracker is about the location where John Rose's farm is. So it could have been they were descending, and that's the reason the flight aware tracker lost it at that point.
Okay. All right. So there's only certain things you can use the planes for, and a political event wouldn't, or the birds for, and a political event wouldn't be that. It doesn't match what was on their request for, we used it for Overwatch and marijuana destruction. That doesn't match. What are some other things that should have been there that weren't there or were contradictory?
Okay, so a couple of things that should have been there, and this is just per policy of the sheriff's office. This is what they did when I was there, and they have a policy that's still in place that, first of all, you do a pre-plan report. You plan out who's going to do what, who's going to be responsible for what, who's going to be stationed where, which comm channels you're going to be using. If there's you would probably communicate with the ambulance service, know where they are, know where the nearest hospitals are. So you're going to do all these pre-checks. And that's called a pre-operation plan. So that was the one thing I asked for, was that operation plan. They didn't provide it. So then the other thing that you would do after the operation is over is, you have to do a plan afterwards, to show what happened. If there were any incidents or anything like that, or any resources that you use, any supplies you use, you would document that in the report that you would file after the fact. Asked for that report, didn't provide.
What about Smith County? What was different from the Smith County report versus the Putnam County, which there should have been initially a request, from Smith County to Putnam County? Is that how it should have been?
Yes, Smith County should have submitted a mutual aid agreement, and the the assistance that they would requested would have been on that. And so once Putnam County received that, then they would start their pre-operational report, their plan report. So they would understand how many personnel they're going to need, what resources they're going to need, and any other information that will be necessary, like any intelligence information that will need to be passed on to the personnel that be on the ground. All that has to be in there. Now, if they were to claim, oh, there was intelligence information that shouldn't have been released, well, they could have redacted that, which
Right.
I doubt there would have been a whole lot in there that's not already public record.
Right.
Because after the fact, they can release those. I mean, even Secret Service releases theirs after the operation is over with.
Right.
So it's not like it's a top secret where nobody can know what's happened or what they plan for. It's nothing like that.
Okay. Now,
but yeah, none of that happened.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, none of that happened. They didn't provide any of those reports. Smith County, I requested it from them. Now, of course, again, Smith County would have sent it. Putnam County would have received it, and then there would have been a response, pre-planning and all the things I've already talked about. Then an after-action report, which again did not happen. But when I requested it from Smith County, first thing they did, the Sheriff's Department in Smith County, is they referred me to their HR department, their Human Resources Department, which was odd. Although I did request the name of some personnel who were in the timesheets of the personnel who were assigned to it from the Smith County Sheriff's Department. So in that respect, it would have made sense. But a lot of the stuff I was requesting would have been only records that would have been at the Sheriff's Department. I can't imagine that they would have stored those records with the HR director. That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, they referred me to the HR director. I sent the request to her. She responded back and said that the matter was under criminal investigation and that they couldn't release anything.
Criminal investigation. Now, let me ask you this: just this chopper flight without all the proper, would that have been considered criminal?
So we don't have enough information to really make that determination yet. But in a hypothetical, if that helicopter was used strictly to go down there as a static display for people at the campaign to come and tour and view, yes, I think that would be criminal. In my opinion, I think it would be an act of official misconduct.
Okay. Is there any, do you know if there's any state law that would go along with that? Any Tennessee code that would support that?
Tennessee code annotated 3916.41 is the statute that talks about official misconduct. And of course, what official misconduct says is that if you're acting in your official capacity as a public servant and that you do something that would create a benefit for someone they weren't entitled to, then that would be official misconduct.
As would,
of course, you're using government resources.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Misuse of government resources as well. Okay.
Right.
Okay. But now, they never told you to this day, you don't know what the criminal investigation was?
No, they didn't tell me. So, I'm going to follow up with the district attorney in that county to see if he knows anything about it, because that's who they referred me to. But, I thought there's a criminal investigation. That was about 3 to 4 weeks ago. We would know something by now. And since nothing has come out, so I'm going to circle back around and follow up with them and find out if, hey, what's the investigation about? They don't have to give me the intricate details of the investigation, but there is some information they can share. They can share, the small scope of the investigation, like we're investigating a theft, or we're investigating this,
Right.
They can give you that information.
They could give you that. Could they give you the person being investigated?
Nothing. They gave me nothing.
No, I mean, could they? Could they give you?
Well, it depends. Now, so what they're doing is they are citing Rule 16, which is Rule 16 is a Tennessee Court of Criminal Procedures rule that basically says that a defendant is entitled to receive information regarding their, the charges against him. And so all reports, lab reports, things like that, the defendant is entitled to see. That's really what Rule 16 is intended for. But a lot of law enforcement agencies and district attorneys, they hide behind that rule and say, oh, we can't release it because there's an ongoing investigation, which is not exactly true. Okay. But once a court case is filed, and once there's a docket assigned to that case becomes public record.
Even though it's not completed, it's public record, everything known up to that point.
Yes.
Well,
So,
well,
but as long as it's under investigation, they're saying that, we can't release anything because it could jeopardize the case. Now, part of that's true.
Right.
If there's some sensitive information going on and, there's still some unresolved issues in that case, you don't want to jeopardize it. I get that part.
Right.
I've been on that side of the fence. I know how that goes. But there are things you can release. I mean, you can release the scope. We're looking at this. There's an issue involving a particular agency, or there's an issue involving a particular person. And sometimes you can name the person, sometimes maybe not name the person.
Right.
It depends on, again, the scope and how far along you are in the investigation.
Yeah. Chase, you had something to say?
I was just going to say that they can't look at it when there's an open criminal proceeding in the rules of what is it, criminal procedure, right, Terry? 12.6b is or 12B?
Rule 16 of,
16,
of criminal procedures. Yeah.
Yeah. So during an active criminal prosecution, well, if there's a criminal prosecution, then there should be a docket number. There should be something, or there should be an impending one immediately about to come.
Right.
My theory is that it's a way to avoid giving someone a public record, because if you say that to them, the only recourse available to Tennessee citizens is to then file a lawsuit over that, or file a petition to have a judge release the records, and that's going to cost you anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000 for an attorney to file, and the attorney's only entitled to get their money back if you can prove that there was willful non-compliance, which means they can claim that they're stupid and that they just did their job. Oh, I'm terrible at my job. It was a mistake. I know I shouldn't overlook stuff like that, but I did. It was an accident, and you're stuck paying your attorney. So it's a most records request, unless you are willing to pursue the follow through. When there's something that they don't want released, they a lot of the time, and I don't know about Smith County, but I do know that this is a common practice across the state, they will hide it under an investigation. But under, I believe it was Scripps v. Department of Mental Health, if the record was created in the normal course of business, like the time cards, the employee sheets that Terry is referencing, then those would still be subject to public records request as long as they're still in HR, or as long as they're, the payroll still has a copy of them. They don't just become confidential because we opened an investigation into it.
Okay. So in this case, the extra personnel, you'd have had the pilot, and then you said there'll be one other guy on the bird. One other.
You have an observer.
An observer. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
an observer.
and of course, they brought the sheriff. Was the sheriff in uniform, or was he in civilian clothes?
Civilian clothes.
Okay.
And
I don't know if they brought him on the helicopter. I don't know his mode of transportation there, but he was there in civilian clothes.
Okay. Oh, so you say you don't know if they brought him on the helicopter?
I don't know that. No.
Okay. We just know the helicopter was there.
When the helicopter was there, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so we got two different stories from Smith County and Putnam County. Well, not two different stories, but Putnam County just didn't give you much information. There's things that they would not provide. Okay. And then Smith County, you didn't get much from them. What did they actually tell you?
Under investigation, referred it to the
So
DA's
you got
office.
nothing from them other than under investigation. And did they say criminal investigation or just under investigation?
Criminal investigation.
Okay, but all right. So that's what we know at this point. Now, on the ethics part of it, was it the campaign, the Bureau of Campaign Finance that they've already had the hearing on in reference to this? Because if you're doing something that would violate a state campaign law, that can be investigated by the state ethics branch or bureau, and they've already had their hearing on that, correct?
Yes, that was the Board of Registry of Finance and Campaign Finance.
Okay.
They're the ones who actually reviewed it and then made a decision of not to investigate it.
Now, were they looking at it from the perspective of, did the sheriff do something wrong, or were they looking at it from a perspective of, well, did the candidate claim this on his as an in-kind contribution? What were they looking at it for?
Well, they would have looked at it from both angles, basically, but To answer your question, I don't know what they looked at because it was about a 4-minute hearing, and they just made a decision that they're not going to pursue it because they felt like that it didn't meet the criteria for them to look at it. So, but that would be this would be considered what's considered an in-kind donation. Of course, an in-kind donation, would be where somebody provided you with something that's a value of $100 or more, and then you have to claim it on your campaign finance disclosure.
Okay.
And so this is what didn't happen as far as John Rose goes. It wasn't on there. The helicopter wasn't on there. So what you have to do, that what the board would have had to have done, is to investigate, go to Eddie Farris and say, hey, did you provide this to him? Why did you provide it to him? What was the issue here? And so, yeah, it would involve both of them. The investigation would involve both parties to determine, exactly what happened. Now, if there was a violation, that would be strictly on to John Rose. That would go toward him. And it's a civil penalty, actually. But what would happen is if the board determined that this was an in-kind donation, then you're going to have a domino effect that takes place at that point, because now you've got an in-kind donation that was donated by the sheriff's department, and it was government resources that shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's going to trigger an investigation. So that would go to the attorney general's office. They're going to start a criminal investigation, which is going to go back toward the sheriff's department. That's typically the way it would go.
Right.
And they'll probably be looking at something like official misconduct or something along those lines, is what they would be looking at.
Okay.
So when the board said we don't see anything, so that kind of cuts that off at the pass, because it doesn't get passed on to the attorney general at that point. But there were some justifications. There were 6 board members. Actually, one of them is from Putnam County, an attorney named Henry Fincher.
I think we have the video. I believe we have the video, don't we?
You want to play the video real quick?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and play it, and then you can fill in the blanks for it.
Okay.
So with that background, moving to the very first one, Eddie Farris, Putnam County Sheriff's Department by Eric J. Hancock, case number 26-01. You have my summary of this sworn complaint in the material, along with the recommendation. So I'm going to hand it over to the Judiciary Board to determine where they want to go with this one.
Mr. Chairman, while you're getting your coffee, can I start my spiel? Thank you, sir. You can tell it's another campaign cycle. We've seen this almost every time we get into this, where one side decides to file something, then you get retaliation on the other side, and then it's just sort of a tit for tat. And we are not meant to be weaponized. And since I've been on here, this is what happens. And I truly wish we could be a little bit more proactive pushing back on stuff like this, because that's exactly what we've got on a number of them this time. And maybe if we keep just denying it, or someone will listen to the comments that don't weaponize us. We're not going to go there. At least I'm not going to go there. I won't speak for anybody else, but I find it a little bit repugnant that this type of stuff, as in the first complaint, comes up, and the second, and there are several of them this time. So I'm pretty adamant this time, more so than I was with poor old Mr. Castell, and I was enjoying my conversation with him just because he does have, he did bring up some interesting points, but this is just wrong.
So, Member Laws, with respect to this particular complaint, the central issue is whether use of a helicopter, I believe, by the Putnam County Sheriff's Department in relation to an appearance
And providing of uniform security.
Providing of uniform security constitutes some type of in-kind contribution.
It's law enforcement, for crimini's sake. Come on. That's in his district. Let's get a little real for a change.
And I agree with you fundamentally. Before, since this is being recorded,
Understood.
Yeah, I think we should probably, at least walk through, the reasoning on each of these as to why this is not, this is, whether we should walk through the question on each one as to whether this is, whether the complaint merits some kind of action so that the public at least understands what we're talking about. And we have some examples that we can provide to the public on the question. So, like you said, this is a law enforcement action to provide security essentially, for a state officer. Does anyone consider this, to be anything we should take any action on?
Your turn.
Member Fincher is recognized.
My microphone's out. It won't. No, yours is out. Of this, these are my home folk. Right now, politically, I agree with what Tom said. I think this is really reaching. The Jeff Jones, who's been our county attorney since the 90s, Jeff was actually elected. That's how long he's been a county attorney. And he's been reappointed ever since. Back when it happened, he and I had a talk about who should go for it. And I'm very glad he got it because he's done a great job and he's doing things that I would not want to have to do. But he pointed out in a letter sent last November where it needed to go, that it needed to go to our district attorney to be reviewed for a possible violation of the Hatch Act. This doesn't seem to impact our campaign finance laws at all, particularly in light of the response from Sheriff Farris and the Sheriff of Smith County, who said he invited him down to help out. So with that, I'm going to move that we take no action.
Yes.
All right. Motion made by Member Fincher, seconded by Member Lawless. Unless there's any discussion, we'll call the question by voice vote. Or
All the question.
Dennis, Fincher,
Aye.
Golden, Haynes,
aye.
Lawless, Johnson.
Aye.
Okay. So they didn't see anything wrong.
Well, I think it's important to note that they didn't see anything wrong in light of Sheriff Farris's response and the response of the Smith County Sheriff.
Good point. Good point.
I think, and those are responses which they've never responded via public records request. They were created during the normal course of business, so they should be subject to public records requests. Those communications should have been handed over when he requested them from the sheriff's office, when he requested them from Smith County, and you know, my dad used to be a cop a long time ago, and oftentimes he'd ask the criminal, "Did you do it?" And he always took them by their word. You know, come on. And I'm curious, Terry, can you think of when has Eric Hammock ever been, not Hamcock, Hammock, when has he ever been the subject of a complaint from John Rose or Eddie Farris? They mentioned retaliation, and I'm just curious what it could be retaliation for. Do you have any idea?
No, that was interesting, though. They made that comment that, this is one campaign coming after another campaign, and Eric doesn't have anything to do with either one, to my knowledge, so I don't know where they got that information from. But there's a part of the video that wasn't shown, and right before they took this up, the gentleman who was speaking, who went on a little bit of I call it a little bit of a tangent there, where he's just talking about, why aren't we here? Why aren't we doing this? Seemed very frustrated they were hearing the complaint. Right before they got to that point, he walks over and he talks to Henry Fincher. This is on camera. He whispers something in his ear, and then when they bring the complaint up, then he starts into his little, tantrum there, whatever he's doing. So I thought that was odd. I don't know what he said to Fincher. Of course, we don't know what's happened there. We don't know what documents they reviewed. If you go back and you look at the first of that, the executive director of the commission, Mr. William Young, he's the one over to the left of the board there who's talking. He makes mention that there's a summary and a recommendation that's in the packet for the board members to review. So I'm interested to know what's in his summary and what was in his recommendation. I have requested those records through a public record request, and they have referred it to their attorney.
So we don't know what was in those records, and we don't know what the sheriff from Smith County said or what Eddie Farris said. But these guys just said, okay, there's nothing there, and this essentially they said it's frivolous and let's just drop it. But when you guys did your FOIAs, Smith County said couldn't give it to you because it's criminal investigation. Putnam County just didn't really give you any information. They didn't give you, there was something they wouldn't give you, Terry, that they did give Chase. But I mean, you still have these two conflicting documents from the counties. And then we don't even know what each sheriff submitted. So, yeah, this is, typical Nashville stuff. I don't know, I'm not going to say there's any smoking gun anywhere, but it sure doesn't look, I understand it's not a huge deal. But the bottom line is, we do have rules that you're supposed to follow. And especially when it comes to government equipment, government time, so on and so forth, because the pilot and that observer or whatever is taught, they were on the clock. Now, in that hearing, they said those guys were there for security. Well, why did they need security the security would have been from Smith County, wouldn't it? Wouldn't Smith County be pulling security?
Well, you would think so. You would think, and that was the reason I requested the number of personnel that Smith County was using that day and requested their timesheets, which is, again, they didn't provide me. But something else, I want to go back real quick and talk about something that Mr. Fincher said. And don't get me wrong, I know Henry. He's a nice guy. Of course, one of the things he did say, though, he said, these are my home folks. I don't know if you caught that or not.
No, I didn't.
Another thing he said was that the sheriff of Smith County invited the sheriff down. So an invitation is different than a request. They're not the same thing.
Right. And there would be a record of that, correct?
Right. Yeah. So, and the one word that we could use here that would cover all this is transparency. There's no transparency at all here. None.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that I think that I didn't even mention that he noticed the first time I watched that video until you guys just showed it. And that was that they propped up Jeff Jones, right? That's the county attorney, and talked about how good of a job he's done and how he forwarded that communication to District Attorney General Bryant Do Nothing Dunaway. And if you look him up, you'll understand why he has that nickname. But Terry, is there any history of Dunaway pretending records don't exist when you file things with him?
There is, and of course, Dunaway's kind of been the missing piece of the puzzle to a lot of this because people saying I've filed an ethics complaint against Sheriff Farris. I guess it's been almost 2 years now. They went to Jeff Jones, the county attorney, and he said he sent it over to Dunaway. So what I did is I waited about a month, give Dunaway plenty of time to receive it. I sent a records request over to Dunaway, said, can you send me a copy of what Jeff Jones sent you? Of course, Dunaway, he played this little shell game with me. He's like, well, your request is not specific enough. You'll have to be more specific. So I submitted another request, was more detailed in what I was looking for. So he finally responds and says, well, I don't have any records that match your request. Of course, that wasn't true. The reason I know that's not true because I submitted a record request to Jeff Jones. I said, can you send me what you sent Mr. Dunaway? He sends me the email he sent Dunaway. Now, the interesting thing about the email that he sent Dunaway is it says, Bryant, per our phone conversation this morning, here's the complaint that Hembree filed. So this was fresh, and it should have been fresh in Dunaway's mind because he had a phone conversation with the county attorney just, a month before that. So it's not something he would have forgotten about. It wasn't like it was 2 years ago.
Right. And so did you need to hit any on the other lawsuit that you have against the sheriff? Is that anything you wanted to hit on?
Well, so there's a history of this. A lot of people, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, have accused me of being a cop hater because I've been looking into Eddie Farris for quite a long time. And it's not just Eddie Farris. I look into everyone that's corrupt that I have time and resources to look into. And there's a lot of people. I put a documentary out in 2023 where I think it was 16 different law enforcement informants telling me different things that had happened. Then things that have now been verified, including the longtime criminal informant that is serving prison time for I don't want to get you kicked off of YouTube. Something unlawful with a 15-year-old girl who winded up dying, and then he dumped her in a ravine. There were a bunch of other victims there, but throughout the course of this, I have made an enemy in that sheriff's department, and Sheriff Farris is a very, very powerful individual. He was the president of the Tennessee Sheriff's Association for a while. At one point, he got a side job working as Eric Holder's bodyguard, which I don't know if it ever showed up on those campaign finance disclosures either, or those income disclosures. And he's worked with the FBI. His chief of administration was the guy that started fusion centers with the Patriot Act. And yeah, he was the former chief of Homeland Security for Miami-Dade. And there's been fake Facebook profiles created attacking Hembree, myself, almost anyone else. I've heard right now that there's a target list that has grown to over 40 people. So, and there's the chief of Monterey Police has reported retaliation. And one of the things that we just filed today, it wasn't actually a lawsuit, it's a petition to unseal a search warrant or a subpoena that was filed into my phone records.
What reason would they have to file, to look at your phone records?
They would have to believe that there was criminal activity, which they had jurisdiction over, which is strange because I live 2 judicial districts away and have only been to Putnam County for fear of the retaliation, which I have already been victimized to or subjected to. I've only been there to do journalist activity. And I'm darn sure I'm not breaking a speed limit. I stop for 3 seconds at a stop sign when I'm there, use my turn signals for extra time because I am on said target list. And I know this because there are other professional law enforcement professionals that retired in good standing, much like Terry Hembree, who have signed other letters to the Attorney General, to the TBI, to the FBI. I have requested comment. Anyone watching right now is more than welcome to request from any of these agencies their communication with me, because this has all been documented. I've published most of it. And the reason this ties into John Rose is because John Rose is one that I probably would have voted for 2 years ago. And when I heard that he was looking, because there's, tight connections, especially with donors in the area, to Eddie Farris, I heard that he was looking at making Eddie Farris the head of the
Homeland Security, Department of Safety. Head of the Department of Safety. Now, this is hearsay, right? This is not something
hearsay,
you have.
Yes,
okay.
Yes. No, but this is hearsay that I heard long before the fish fry. I heard this a year plus ago when John was first starting his campaign, and you can go back to my post in October of 24 when I think it was October 24. But you can search John Rose on my page, and I was telling him, hey, whatever you do not put this guy near your campaign because he's going to tank it. And he should know that, because when my girlfriend was threatened back right after I filed the First Amendment lawsuit against Sheriff Farris, we reached out to Congressman Rose's office because my girlfriend's best friend at the time worked for Congressman Rose. And she knew all of that is habitual behavior from the sheriff's office, and they didn't do anything. And since then, John has decided to pretend that that's never happened and said that he has heard nothing of it and that he has no idea. He's never heard a bad thing about Eddie, and that I just have a axe to grind. And my axe to grind is that I get, I don't know, 8-10 different people a week message me because of something else that has happened or that they've heard that has happened in that area. And I have seen women victimized. I've seen women have publicly claimed that Sheriff Farris has shown up to their work to threaten them. And if this person, and the filing that I had today was to unseal the subpoena and the search warrant. And if this person becomes the head of law enforcement in Tennessee, then it will be like living under Biden. But
Have any
in
of these
Tennessee.
people have they filed any complaints with any law enforcement agency? Obviously,
Yes.
they wouldn't file it with Putnam County, but have they filed it with anybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the TBI, in my request for comment, claimed that they'd never received those requests. And I have copies of them. I have video of myself going in and doing it. Terry Hembree has had an interview with them, and I have copies of the return, the signed certified mail receipts that people have sent. There's been at least 5 people who have contacted them. So,
Wow.
but the snitch that I mentioned earlier was a shared snitch.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into that. That was the darker side of our story tonight. So we've hit on them a couple times. Let's go ahead and talk about that and anything connected to that. So Terry, I think you have information on this as well as Chase, or does Chase have most of it? Or
I think Chase has most of that information.
So while I was blocked from the sheriff's office, one of the things that happened was that a 15-year-old girl named Olivia Taylor was reported missing, and a few days later, her body was found off the side of a road in Cookeville.
when was this?
And this was October 20-something of 2022. And I filed my federal lawsuit against Eddie in December 19th of 2022. So at this time, I was blocked. So I didn't know about this when it first happened. When I finally became unblocked, part of what I had to do was to find where they had used the sheriff's office page in their official capacity to support my First Amendment lawsuit, that it was the sheriff's office page, not his private page. And I stumbled across this post. I had some other people reach out to me. And then one of my law enforcement sources told me that Chuck Carter, the man who did all of those things, was a snitch, and was that if I got a copy of his phone, I would likely find communications between him, Harold Eaton of the TBI, and likely Eddie Farris or other high-ranking members of the Putnam County Sheriff's Office. Well, fast forward to he pleads guilty to 19 years, which is less time than West Tennessee typically gives just someone convicted of dealing, let alone unaliving a 15-year-old girl after abusing her and then dumping her body. Well, a year after he pled guilty, I was finally able to get the records because Dunaway's office was slow walking them. And when I got that, then it was $1,500 after they finally got the total. It was $1,500 to get the records. So I went in with a few people. We reviewed some records, and I've gotten most of those records now, just paying for it bit by bit. And those records revealed in their own statements that Chuck Carter was in fact an informant in Chase Mathis's report, not Chase Matheson, which is my name, Chase Mathis.
Okay.
Okay. He is a high-ranking detective, I believe. One of the task force members at one point. I think he was the U.S. Marshals task force. And throughout this case, I'm putting together a documentary trying to fill everybody in. Like, hey, I told you he was a snitch. Now I have the proof, and I'm starting to put everything out. And I got his phone records, Chuck Carter's phone records. And through that, I found, I believe it was 7 other minor victims. And the disturbing part is
Minor
that the
victims in what way?
Grape. Okay, I don't want to get you kicked off YouTube by saying the R word. But,
okay, gotcha.
And I've interviewed several of these women. I've spoken to 6 of them directly, but a lot of them don't want to go on camera. 2 did give me an interview on camera with blurring out their face, but they want to speak to law enforcement. One of them still has the shot glass that she was drugged in when she was 14 years old. And he was bragging to these little girls about how he had the sheriff in his back pocket, according to their statement, and that he had money. During the second interrogation, they mention how the sheriff has called his dad. His dad was a longtime revenue agent for the Alcohol Beverage Commission, and before that was a TBI guy. Very good money. Apparently had done well for himself, and apparently a stand-up guy.
You're talking about Chuck's father.
Dad.
Okay.
Chuck's father, yes. And Chuck was the I'm guessing the bad apple, but he got protection. And this is well known. There are dozens of victims over the past 30 or 40 years of this man. And Eddie Farris is not solely to blame by any means. The previous sheriff, who's a county commissioner there now, David Andrews, also let this guy get away with whatever he was doing for a long time. And the previous sheriff before that, Abston, likely let him do the same thing. Either that or they're just really, really bad cops.
Let me ask a question here. So, Terry, did you ever hear, in your department, did you ever hear anything about this guy? Or anything concrete, or just rumor mill, or did you hear anything at all?
We heard his name, you know, even before I got to the sheriff's department. I mean, I was familiar with his name, yes.
Okay, but not the activity with the underage girls or accusations.
I wasn't aware of that, but no.
Yeah, so there was
not the one that Chase is talking about. No, I wasn't aware of those incidents.
Okay, and now all those are accusations by the underage girls, and were they, some of them were they made to the police department or somebody else, some other law enforcement?
So the records that I had to pay for, okay, so that I had to pay for these records to be reviewed and redacted by an attorney with the DA's office. In those records, there are dozens of text messages, including mentions about I have to sneak out because my mom has called, or because DCS is on my ass, pardon my language. But so there is verifiable proof that he was at least grooming these kids and soliciting to offer them drugs in exchange for certain things, making references about sitting places that they shouldn't. And the stories from the girls have never seen the phone dump that I've gotten, right, because the DA's office didn't redact all the phone numbers, and I don't want to give out a bunch of 17, because some of the girls are still 17 years old. The statute of limitations has not started to run yet.
Right.
I didn't want to expose that. So they have corroborated what would be in those messages without ever having seen them. So the only way they would know that and be able to tell me what was talked about would be if they had sent them.
So, but these messages were on Chuck's phone, right?
Which was in evidence by law enforcement, and they charged me to redact it and review it.
Okay,
so somebody at least once had to do it.
Okay, so they got these records after they arrested him for the murder, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And during his, because they didn't actually arrest him for the murder to begin with. They arrested him because the girl's phone was pinging at his house and some other things. They originally arrested him just for, like, I think it was statutory, because he admitted to it,
right,
and was showing them the phone during the thing, and well, those are her other friends. But one of the things was missing from my records request that I got from several things were actually missing. Several interviews and things that I knew had occurred were not in the file that was given to the DA's office. So one of them was the first 3-hour interrogation of Chuck Carter the night that they arrested him. And I do have a supplemental report from that, and that is the report where it is admitted to where Chase Mathis admits I had a relationship with him because he was a longtime informant, and up until recently we had good rapport or something like that. And that is where Chuck confessed to sleeping with multiple of the girls. So he confessed to the crimes that they had the evidence of, and none of these girls were ever questioned.
Wait a minute, so you mean, so now wait a minute. So this happened a few years ago, and there's been no follow-up from the police department?
And no follow-up from the police department or the sheriff's office. They are terrified because of what Chuck told them. Because these girls told me things that I had to go and verify about how much, how long the relationship had been ongoing with Eddie and some things like that. So he had obviously bragged about it. And then I also spoke to several former deputies, and one went on record describing instances. And I think it was well known that Chuck had a thing for girls younger than him, 20, 21. There's a college there. But I don't know if it was a recent development or if it was something that they just always kind of turned. And his words as a deputy was, I just don't think they were very curious about what he was doing. But he alleged that the people that Chuck was involved with were responsible for moving hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and guns and tens or more pounds of methamphetamine. So I believe that there is a lot of corruption in that area that has been overlooked for whatever reason.
Right. But we don't have any, we don't know, we can't connect that the police department knew that there was activity with underage girls. That's not the claim we're making, even though they probably should have known, right?
Not before they arrested him.
Right.
When they arrested him and he confessed to it, they did, and they never pursued anything else.
Right. And there was a while from the time he confessed until the trial and until he was convicted, right?
Yes, and in fact, what they did do, though, is blame it on fentanyl crossing the border, not leaving a snitch on the streets for 30 years. So, I think that the family, I think, and the families of these other girls, they really deserve their day in court. Unfortunately, Tennessee has some strong laws where, in the most severe of cases, the statute of limitations has either only started to just run or is fairly long. They've made the laws better recently, but these would apply to the old laws, which I think gives them 10 or 15 years from the time they turn 18. So if another law enforcement agency they would like to go to the FBI in the area because there was also evidence of interstate child trafficking on Chuck's phone. He helped a 13-year-old girl across state lines to North Carolina, where she was picked up as a runaway, and he had offered to move these girls out of the country. Whether that was bollocks and he was just talking big to impress young girls, he did help transport them across state lines, and that evidence is verifiable, admitted to in his own phone, in the evidence that they charged me once again to review.
Wow. Anything else that we need to hear about this or need to know as far as investigation status of you're saying that there's no open investigation involving these other minor girls that were abused by Chuck?
No, there is, to this day, none of them have ever been questioned. And if I could find them, then surely a law enforcement agency could find them with the same evidence, unredacted.
Yeah. Well, they already have a record of it from his phone, right?
And they already have a confession. It would be the easiest extra thing to do, but this guy's, maybe it was a favor to his dad. Maybe it was just they didn't want the publicity of his public statements and confessions coming into play, or these girls talking about how long they'd been around him, because he'd been allowed to do this for decades. Right. Maybe just it's better to keep all of those questions not asked, not pursue it. And their viewpoint is probably, well, he's in jail. What more do you want?
Right.
And I think that the 7 other victims, the girls who were 13 to 17 at the time, I think they deserve justice.
You think there's other Chuck Carters out there working for other departments?
For sure.
Terry?
There was.
Terry, what do you think?
But yeah, I would imagine that they're always using informants for one reason or another. And, we were at an event that Sheriff Farris was at back in February. And, he even made mention of that. He said, informants are good. They can give you good information, but if they can report for you, they can report on you. So, and that's true. I never liked using informants. Sometimes they can give you good information, but, a lot of times you can just develop it on your own if you just give it a little time. So, yeah, the departments always use informants. They're always out there, and there's plenty of them. And but it was one of those things where I always try to steer clear of them and just try to work it directly and develop the information in another way.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any closing thoughts from either one of you?
So one thing I want to mention as far as go back to the helicopter. Of course, I've got the record request pending from the Board of Registry or the Registry Board to find out what was in that packet that they gave the board members before they made their decisions. Still waiting on those documents. I've also contacted LISO to request documents about the helicopter. A lot of things can happen at this point because LISO could come in and do an audit. They have an inspector general's office. If they think that helicopter was misused, they can come in and do their own investigation. And of course, if they find out there was some misuse of that helicopter, then you're dealing with federal charges. If there's a criminal act, I'm not saying there is because I don't have enough information.
Right.
But I'm saying that that's certainly an option here that could happen. that with Liso looks at it and they're like, yeah, that's not kosher. We got to go in and find out exactly what they were doing with this helicopter.
Yeah, and that would be on the sheriff, not on Congressman Rose.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. Okay.
So my final thoughts would be a lot of this doesn't have a lot to do with Congressman Rose. I think he's probably just a stereotypical, Republican politician, some good, some bad, has to make friends with people who have money. But all you have to do is go read the comments on some of the posts about Chuck Carter. Anyone who lived in town and didn't have their head buried in the sand would have known about Chuck Carter or heard his name. And the fact that he has chosen to put someone like Eddie Farris so close to his campaign and even let him work on the campaign, I think it's much to the same downfall that Andy Ogles just experienced, having that staffer post that homophobic tweet or whatever that he got in a whole bunch of trouble for, and Andy had to apologize. I think it shows questionable decision making. And I really think that if John was given the opportunity to see the real evidence, because I'm not asking people to trust me, but the real evidence, he would be a little bit more willing to understand why so many people are so upset, because this shouldn't happen in the United States of America.
Absolutely. Your website, we've got that information. And what time are you on? You said Sundays and Wednesdays?
Sundays and Wednesdays at 7:00. And much like you, we have a little bit of an intro at the beginning, and we give a shout out to some fantastic sponsors. We also have a website, patriotpunknetwork.com, and all of our socials are kind of embedded at the top there, so you can find us. We stream everywhere but YouTube. We're working on getting YouTube back, but we received a couple of copyright strikes a long time ago, or not copyright, but thought crime strikes.
Thought crimes, yeah.
Yeah. So you still can't talk about certain things that happened 6 years ago. So we haven't streamed on YouTube in a while, but we do. We have over 1,000 followers on Rumble, and we just hit 17,000 followers on our Facebook page. So, which is all just Patriot Punk Network.
Okay. And you have a Substack, Terry?
Yes, the Investigative Ledger. I try to post about every other week, sometimes weekly. And it's all based on information that I've obtained, mainly through public records and through other sources regarding public officials and their lack of transparency.
Yeah, no shortage of that in every county, I'm pretty sure. Well, hey, thank you both for being with us, and thank you for what you do. And look forward to hearing from you. See how these things turn out, and down the line. And I say down the line because I'm sure they'll drag it out.
Well, fortunately, I'm in it for the long haul, and I'm younger than anybody else involved. So we'll see who's got the most stamina.
All right. Well, hey, thanks again, guys. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Now it's time for the Informer Report. Well, apparently we don't need a Congress for war. Now, it's actually, in practice, been that way since the end of the Second World War. I mean, we've had one war after another. And, of course, we have the situation in Iran. And, I've talked about this before. Yet Iran's dangerous, and them having a nuke is a scary thought. What I don't quite understand, I know the Democrats, of course, are pushing these war powers resolutions because they wanted to restrict Trump. But, according to the Constitution, the Congress is supposed to have something to say about going to war. But what I don't understand, since it is a serious situation, everybody will agree that it's a dangerous situation for a country like Iran to have a nuke. Why hasn't the GOP, somebody in the GOP, put forth a bill, let's declare war? I mean, if it's that important, and I think it's, I'm not saying that we shouldn't deal with them. I think we probably didn't do enough investigation of how well they had fortified over the last 47 years. I think there were some intelligence failures. I think it's turned out to be a whole lot harder than anybody anticipated. But all the same, we're here. And, so if it's that important, then we need to just go ahead and declare war. I don't know why somebody from the GOP hasn't put that forth. And the other thing I don't quite understand, and I agree, you can't trust Iran. I agree they're crazy. And President Trump has said that. But you know, they had the thing going back and forth between Israel and Iran, trading shots there in Lebanon. Well, and actually Iran is hitting Israel, and Israel's hitting back at Iran, and Israel's hitting Hezbollah in Lebanon. And apparently Trump was upset and saying, hey, you know, let's, telling Netanyahu to chill out and not retaliate, blah, 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 because we're really close to a deal. How do you have a deal with somebody you can't trust? I don't see how you do that. I mean, we're not going to have a trust but verify situation with them. I don't see how. I don't think anybody believes that they are going to allow reasonable inspections. I don't see that happening. I really don't. So Trump's great in a lot of ways, but he's all over the place in other ways. And I really think it should have never gone this long, okay? Taking care of an immediate threat is one thing, and we can have discussions on that, but we're at 100 days now. And it's a serious problem. The fact that we have a Congress that we don't trust, and we have good reason not to trust them. And we know that the Democrats are just citing the Constitution because Trump is in power. Now, and this has been going on forever in our country. The party out of power wants to act like the great defender of the Constitution, but they really don't give a damn about it. And then when they're in power, they ignore it and they violate it. And both parties have violated it. But we can't continue this way. Long term, we cannot continue this way. And I want you to think about something. What if we, with the free hand that Trump has been given on this, what happens when we get another Democrat in the office? What if we get a Biden or an Obama or a Harris? Do we want them to have the free hand that Trump has had? I don't. I don't know what we're going to do, guys. Our country is in a mess. It is in a mess. And I don't know what's going to happen. I do not know what's going to happen. But I know we have to find a way to follow the Constitution, some way, somehow. Now, another thing that's in the news lately, the U.S.-Israel military merger seems to be on track. Look, that's just wrong. It doesn't matter what the country is. It doesn't matter if it's Israel, Iceland, Ireland. You don't merge our military with any other military. And in my opinion, and I know this doesn't meet the legal definition, but in my opinion, this is treason. Bottom line, you do not mix our military with anybody else. We can work with other militaries when the time comes, but merging our military to the degree they're talking is wrong. And we may have done things in the past with them or other countries, and people will bring that up. I'm like, okay, just because we did something stupid and wrong in the past does not mean we need to keep doing it. I want to talk about arrogant politicians in Tennessee. I've talked a lot about, probably talk more about Marcia on this show than I have Representative Rose. And I'm going to hit a little bit on Marcia, and then we're going to talk about Rose. Marcia feels entitled. She thinks this election is just a coronation. She feels entitled. She feels it's her time. They have these polls out. I think her polls are total BS. I think they're created to make her look invincible. And so people will just give up, roll over, and say it's going to be Marcia. I really believe that that's what she thinks. And this sense of entitlement, that's the height of arrogance. She should be willing to debate. And the fact that she's relying on the polls, okay, yeah, that may be politically smart, but once again, she's asking to be the governor for the state. Now, at least within the party, do we not deserve to get a debate, a side-by-side with at least the three major candidates? I think we do. Now, John Rose has said he was ready to debate anytime, anywhere. But every time he's challenged by Monty Fritz, he's like, oh, no, we have to have Marcia. Marcia has to be there. The other day on the Matt Murphy show, and I didn't get to hear the actual interview with John Rose. Apparently he had just finished and he was kind of summing it up. And he basically said, I guess Rose had made the comment because Matt Murphy had asked Rose, hey, Monty Fritz is willing to debate you. Why don't you debate him? And he said, well, I'm a major candidate, and I'm paraphrasing here. Well, I'm a major candidate, and, I don't want to punch down. Well, Matt, to his credit, so wait a minute, you guys are polling, whether the polls are realistic or not, you guys are polling within the margin of error. You're not really punching down. When it was all said and done, he felt like he was a major candidate because of the zeros behind his name. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand you need money to win an election. But this idea that he's not going to debate Monty because he's got more money than Monty has. And he doesn't want to have a debate unless Marcia is involved. I think both Marcia and John, I believe that, as Monty has said, one's scared and the other's glad of it, because I think when either one of them get on that stage with Monty, their careers, their campaign is done. They're done, and they know it. And so they're afraid of that. Here's the bad thing, too. Think about Rose. Well, I'm not going to do a debate unless Marcia is there. If you're going to hide behind a woman's skirt, it ought to at least be your own wife. Of course, then again, we know she wears the pants. All the same, it's disgraceful that you won't debate Monty. But I think we know why you won't debate Monty. Also, in terms of, he keeps talking about the CEO thing. Well, he's got CEO experience. And hats off to him. He did a good job as CEO, apparently. Made good money. But he wants people to look at his time in the private sector and all the money he made. And those zeros matter. Apparently, and I'm sure this is true for Marcia, they don't want anybody to look at all the zeros they added to the deficit. And that's what we as voters need to be looking at. I don't want to hear about your great business sense and your great results in your private business. What matters to us is how you spent our tax dollars. And all the zeros there, you just added to the deficit. So anyway, there needs to be a debate. Rose needs to man up if he can and debate Monty. Marcia will probably continue to delude herself. She's much more unpopular than her team wants to admit. Anyway, that's it. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Check out our audio podcast on iHeart, Radio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, tinformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Join us this Thursday, June 11th, 8 p.m. Central, when our guest will be Kent Morrill from Knoxville, who is seeking to oust Senator Richard Briggs, who is one of the worst in the legislature. He's challenging him for a seat in this upcoming primary, August 6th. Join us again Monday, June 15th at 7 p.m. with our guest, Patty Johnson, who writes for News and Views and other publications. I think she's got a couple of books out as well, to discuss the controversial topic of AI data centers, a very hot topic. Should be an interesting show. Please take the time to check out other shows brought to you by West Tennessee TV by going to westtennesseetv.com or myparistv.com, where you can find the links to the Mike Weatherford Show, Sportscast with Jeremy Buckalow. Tomorrow night, Mike will host a debate/discussion between candidates for the office of Carroll County Sheriff. I'm sure that will be great as well. And next Sunday, Jeremy has the Sportscast Roundtable from soccer to the NBA. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.